Good evening and welcome to the March 28th meeting of the West Sacramento Planning Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter along with a request to speak cards. A reminder to everyone that requests to speak cards should be completed and turned in to the clerk prior to the completion of any staff presentation. For those speakers wishing to speak on items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the commission, please write the item number on your card. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. So the first item on our agenda is presentations on by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the commission. Please note that the commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. Are there any comments on items not on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item B, correspondence and staff communication from the Planning Commission Secretary. Mr. Tilley, do we have any communication we should be aware of?
Yes, just real brief tonight. First of all, I want to thank the Planning Commission for being flexible in your schedules and accommodating this special meeting tonight. Last week's meeting was a little too early, and then next week's meeting would be a little bit too late. So we're here. And then for those of you who didn't have a chance, we do have Leslie Walker with the City Attorney's Office here tonight in pinch hitting for Mona. So we'll remain in good hands with her. So, that's all for staff communications tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. Item C is disclosure of ex parte communications. Planning commissioners should disclose any communications they've had on the agenda at this time. And I'll start by looking to my left. Mr. Liebig, Mr. Vu. Okay, so seeing that. Mr. Vu, will you be willing to lead us in a pledge this evening?
I definitely would.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're now to the agenda portion. We have items 1, 2, and 3 on the agenda. I am going to recommend that we move agenda item 3 up. So we will go to items 1, and then 3, and then 2. Are there any concerns about this from the commission?
Nope.
All right, seeing none, I will, we'll move to the consent agenda item, minutes from our last meeting on February 2nd. Hopefully the commissioners have had a chance to review them, and I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion from Commissioner Castillo.
Second.
I have a second from Vice Chair Sturmfels. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. We will move on to item 3. Consideration of approval of annual interim bridge district event parking permit for the proposed 351 space parking lot at 835 Riverfront Street. Mr. Laffey.
Yeah, before Mr. Laffey begins, I'm just going to give the commission a brief background about how this will be really related to both items, as to really how we got to where we are, today. These interim parking lots have been in the municipal code and provided for in this matter really since the Raley Field stadium was approved back in the late 90s and then opened in 2000, right, Jeff? And so we have been doing these parking lots on an interim basis annually ever since. Some of the lots that we have used in the past are not there anymore, such as like where Capitol Yards is now, that used to be a large lot. But by and large, many of the lots, have been used continuously ever since then. Typically, the zoning administrator has been able to approve these annual permits, at his or her authority. And that remains the case, but there are some reasons why a few times over the years we have brought them to the Planning Commission for consideration in a broader context. I believe the last time we did that was when all the Bridge District, all the roads and utilities were all under construction, and everything was kind of jumbled out there. Whereas, the preceding, several years, it pretty much was rolling over, the same lots all over again. So these are intended to be interim, and that's why they aren't fully improved the way, you might think of a parking lot with, landscaping and full paving and all of that. Because the hope would be that, eventually these lots, these properties would be developed. And so we don't want to see a tremendous amount of investment into them because, you have to get that investment back out before it can transition, to a higher use, such as like where Capitol Yards is. But there are some minimum standards that need to be applied to make sure these lots, are usable, and safe for events, that are going almost year-round now in the Bridge District, whereas, this was a little simpler when it first started, when we were primarily dealing with baseball, which was sort of late March into August approximately, usually good weather, not too much rain during that time. So we're bringing there's a few reasons why we're bringing these, and we'll get into that as we talk about each individual item. But since this hasn't been to the Planning Commission in quite a while, and I think all of you, perhaps except for Commissioner Liebig, probably haven't considered these before, I wanted to provide a little bit of background of how we've been doing this since the stadium opened. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Laffey unless you have any questions for me.
Good evening, Chair Austin and members of the Commission. The Community Development Department received a request for an annual interim parking permit to use the vacant lot at the southeast corner of Tower Bridge Gateway and Riverfront Street for a special event parking during the 2017 event season. Interim parking lots in the waterfront zone require annual approval by the zoning administrator, and in the past years, the zoning administrator has approved the parking permit requests. Interim parking lots may only be used for special events within West Sacramento, such as baseball games, marathons, the off-the-grid events at the barn. They cannot be used for regular parking or for events on the other side of the river in Sacramento. For parking to be allowed at these lots as a primary use year-round, instead of just for special events, a conditional use permit would be required, and full site improvements such as drainage and permanent lighting would be required. For this lot, the police department's traffic division, traffic and special event division reviewed the application and noted problems in the past with queuing and directing of vehicles into the lot. So they requested a condition be added that the lot be striped with paint prior to use. And this has been added as condition number 18. Staff is recommending that Planning Commission tonight approve the request and an affirmation or affirm the zoning administrator's decision.
All right, thank you for your report. So I'll begin with any questions or comments from the commission, again, starting with Mr. Liebig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have some questions. Seamus, my questions are all about the conditions. I have questions on 3 conditions, and the questions pertain to actually why they're in there. The first condition on this project that I have a question about is number 8. It's for the requirement of existing parking lots to comply with, new or existing parking lots to comply with Cal Green requirements for designated parking for electric vehicles and similar. But these permits are for temporary lots. So for clarification, would these temporary lots be required to install parking for electric vehicles?
So this condition was added a few years ago, and this condition is allowing for a special, they don't have to install electric vehicle charging, just provide a special space, designated space for electric vehicles. That was my understanding of this requirement when it was added in.
Yeah, this came in once the last building code went into effect. Cal Green is a subset of the building code, and it does reference either new parking lots or modifications to existing parking lots would need to provide essentially preferential parking, similar to what the old days we used to be for carpool parking for EVs. So we'd be primarily talking about some signage, maybe striping.
Gotcha. So it's for preferential parking, not necessarily charging stations.
Yeah, that's correct.
Would be a very expensive endeavor.
We should note that the city's lot that's under construction will include charging stations.
Okay, thank you. The next one is Condition number 10. Oh, thank you. And these, all three of these apply to both. I know it's not really fair to talk about both, but the applicants are sitting next to each other. Number 10, the operator shall have personnel on site throughout the duration of when the lot is in use, and the personnel shall stay until the last car leaves the lot after an event. Now, living near Rayleigh Field, I will note that there are cars there in the morning that clearly did not drive home. So I'm just thinking we might need to tweak this one just slightly to allow for language that we don't have to have their poor staff camping overnight. So I propose a slight modification that we say until the last car leaves the lot after an event, or the lots are substantially or substantively empty. Something like that. Maybe the legal team can QC my language, and then when we open the public hearing, Mr. Ramos, I think, is here, can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, along with you guys. Number 15, operator shall cooperate with the West Sacramento Police Department. I have no problem leaving this in. I just would note that I expect everybody in the city of West Sacramento will cooperate with the West Sacramento Police Department.
Yeah, these few run of conditions here, about like 9 through 15, were requested by the police to be added to this particular lot. A couple years ago, after the first or second year, they did have some troubles with this specific lot in terms of how it was being operated. So our understanding is that situation has improved significantly, since that time. But we do want to maintain some of these things for the police in the event that, the lot does sort of go back to bad habits.
Okay. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm going to ask is for the city attorney to consider some of the comments that Mr. Liebig has provided. We may have some additional ones, and then when we've gone through our first round of comments, we can hear back from you on any recommendations that you might have. Thank you. So Commissioner Vu, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions. I had seen in the report for item number 2, and again, I bring it up because they're pretty much related, some slots available for, or some spaces available for disabled parking, but I didn't see any mention of that in item number 3. So I was wondering if there would be parking spaces available for disabled parking.
Disabled parking is provided actually at the stadium itself, and then also at the barn, there's disabled parking provided right at the facility. So that's how those two facilities meet their obligation for that.
Okay, thank you for that. And second question, and it relates to the item number 2 as well. I was just curious what type of revenue the city would be seeing from the parking generated from these lots.
Okay. Yeah, the city has received revenue for part of these lots. It's primarily to help fund the traffic enforcement that the city provides out there. This is not intending to be a revenue-making thing per se, but that has been in place, really since the inception, where the city does receive, I think it's like $2 a car as part of that to help offset those costs.
Okay, great. Commissioner Lepore, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, the only comment I have, because I do live over there and walk along there quite a bit with my new puppy, and just wondering about the trash and maintenance and some of those other items. I didn't see anything on that unless I missed one of the comments, or conditions rather, about maintaining and cleaning of the lot.
And I'll also mention that I'll after our initial comments, I'll provide an opportunity for the applicant to respond, but I don't know if staff has any initial comments back at this time.
I believe largely condition number 2 can address that, but it would be good to hear from the applicant on what their day-to-day housekeeping practices are.
Great, thanks. That was the only other comment then, and I had the same one about the Cal Green, but you already answered that, so.
Commissioner Castillo?
I'm good right now.
Just a broader question for city staff. I know we're working on development of a city lot currently close by. Can you talk about what role that lot would play in special events, if any, or are we considering that part of the parking total that's available either in the short term or the long term for the Rayleigh Field?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief answer on that. I'm going to let Mr. Doherty fill in on more of the details, but, I mean, that lot is under construction. It should be finished relatively soon. It would be available for special events. However, how we're going to price it is going to be intended to discourage people from using it for special events. And so Mr. Doherty I think, can elaborate on that.
Sure. Good evening, Chris Doherty with the Public Works Department. I'm currently managing the parking policy and program in the city of West Sacramento. To reiterate a little bit of what Mr. Tilley said, we are trying to actively discourage parking in that new lot during Rayleigh Field events, and we're also doing the same on the street. We're doing that in a couple different ways. First of all, the traffic control pattern will be set up to not make it very easy to get into that lot. So that's the first way. The second way, we are creating a special event pricing structure that is going to be more expensive than the current regime for the Rayleigh Field lots, so that the idea there is when we have meters throughout the Bridge District on the streets and when we have that lot opened up, so that parking will be available for other uses in the Bridge District when events happen at the barn and for residential parking in the housing that's there now.
And then just one follow-up question. I don't know if this
Sure.
would be for you, Mr. Doherty, or Mr. Laffey, or Mr. Tilley. Long-term, as we continue to see development in the Bridge District, how do we deal with the parking situation for events in Rayleigh Field? I mean, we had this 2,300 car number that I think was in the staff report, but at some point when those properties are developed, we're not going to have 2,300 street-level spaces. So what is the long game? And I ask because now, maybe 5 years ago, we weren't seeing as much movement happening over there, but now we're really starting to.
Sure, and I can address that. As we move forward and we start seeing more and more development coming, we'll start seeing the impetus for structured parking there. And on the current site, where we are wrapping up the construction of that new parking lot, we intend depending on what development trigger we choose, to have a parking structure there. So we'll replace the need for, I think it's right about 3,000 cars at max capacity for the River Cats. We'll probably have that spread over multiple structures, similar to how Golden One is addressing their parking needs right now throughout multiple parking assets in the downtown area. We'll have multiple structures and buildings that can absorb that, so we won't have big swaths of surface parking.
And for Mr. Tilley, would the design or future projects around parking come to the commission for design review?
Perhaps not for design review itself, but I do anticipate that projects, be it these parking lots or even development projects that may be requesting, like zoning administrator consideration of different parking standards for the foreseeable future, I would anticipate that many of those will come before the Planning Commission because, things are picking up out there. Even though they're largely going according to plan on a, grand scheme, this certainly is a hot topic, right now. But Mr. Doherty's correct where the end of the evolution is into garages. We started with the street parking, now we're moving to the off-site lot, and that will probably be the case for a while, and then sooner or later, we will see, a garage. I know on the property just south of this one, for example, there's a large project proposed there, and they have like a 4-level garage, in it. So things are moving, and they're even moving maybe even a little faster than what we anticipated, which we think is good.
Thank you. I appreciate I veered quite a bit off the agenda item with these questions, but I want to make one final comment on this, and that's I want to make really sure that in our future plans to build garages in this area that we're really thoughtful about first floor design and mixed-use options and including them when possible, because what I do not want to see is a repeat of what I deal with every day by the Ziggurat, and that's a block-long parking lot on what is really a prime piece of real estate with no street activation, and it's become a dead street. And I know that everyone shares those design principles in the city, but particularly in this area, I think it's really important that we're super thoughtful about those as we go from street-level parking to structured garage. So whether that includes us or not, however it works, but I would hate to see a dead
Fortunately,
block
the
there.
specific plan contemplates that, and when the Third Street example is exactly what we do not want to do again.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll invite a representative from the applicant to come. Do I need to open a public hearing for the applicant to comment?
This is not formally a public hearing, wasn't noticed that way, but you still may take public comment.
All right, well, I will welcome the applicant to come in and respond to some of the comments or, describe your project and vision to us.
Michael Ramos, I go by Mick, 30-year businessman here in West Sacramento, and I think the question was, how are we going to take care of the garbage after the games? So typically, if it's a Monday through Friday game, we have staff, that includes myself, driving around the site, and we have garbage cans placed around the entire site. So if it's a Saturday game, it doesn't get attended to till Monday morning, but that's about our only lapse in picking it up. My father's an ex-Marine, okay? So it's just one of those things. We keep it, it's a clean site, and I hope you've noticed that over the years. That's about it, I think, as far as the questions.
Would you care to respond to some of the questions about, I'm looking at essentially items 9 through roughly 15 or 16, about whether you are comfortable with the existing conditions of approval and any reaction to them?
The striping that was requested, item 18, we'll go ahead and stripe the site. The police department seems to think that that is something that'll keep things a little more uniformed on site as far as patrons coming in, how we queue the cars. We lose some flexibility if there's another event on site, if they're doing a marathon or we got an event on site with some shared parking. But it's not, we can overcome it. So if it's striping, we're okay with the striping. Some of the other terms were what we've had the last couple of years, and it's worked out.
All right, thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments for the applicant?
No, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
Actually, Mr. Ramos.
Yes.
If you were comfortable with number 10, since that is an older one, that you will have staff on site until the last car leaves the lot after an event?
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. You're right.
You can do that.
We have not adhered to that, and I'll admit it. It's typically, we have cars that Uber shows up and takes a patron away, and they stay there all night. So typically, we're running around 15% is what's remaining in the lot to 10%, and traffic has died down is when the operator leaves the site. So substantially empty, I guess.
The origin of this condition was, I think, in the first year, they had staff out there, they parked all the cars, and then everybody left. And then when the game was over, people had to fend for themselves in terms of getting out of this lot, and that was problematic, I think, from the police standpoint. So the main goal is to make sure that when people are leaving, that there is somebody there that can direct them to whichever exit they need to go to.
And I see the city attorney. Would you like to provide some recommendations for some modification to conditions approval?
Sure, the modification that I would recommend that may continue to achieve the purpose of the condition, but make it more feasible, is to put a time limit on it, like, for example, until the last car leaves the lot, or 2 hours after the event, or 3 hours after the event, if that would be workable and achieve that.
Can I recommend 24 hours or something within that? So 24 hours after the end of the event, or something like that?
I think that misses the point.
Yeah. What typically happens is 1 hour after event, we're down to the stragglers, which would be, if it's a 200 car night, we have 4 cars in there. And it's usually between 1 hour to an hour and a half unless the River Cats have something special going on after the game. But when the event's over, we're always an hour max to empty the lot. It always surprises us. Even on the big nights, we get everybody out of there in an hour and 20 minutes. So,
I see, the issue is this, when the staff are present, not that the cars need to be off of the lot.
Right.
Okay, because I'm going 2 hours after, they're not coming back from that Uber.
yeah. Oh, no, exactly. Yeah, they went home. So are we talking about something, language that says empty or 2 hours after the event, or?
Yeah, the condition currently reads.
Excuse
operators-
me, I'm sorry, your microphone's off, Leslie. If you could turn that on. Thank you.
That's not helpful. There we go, is that better?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
so the condition currently reads, "Operator shall have personnel on site throughout the duration of when the lot is in use, and the personnel shall stay on until the last car leaves the lot after an event." And what we would add to that is, or 1 hour, 1 or 2 hours, whatever you want, 1 or 2 hours after the event, so that whichever occurs first. Do you want me to
I
repeat that?
recommend 90 minutes, just as a,
Okay.
as this another small business owner, and knowing labor is something that you always are
Yep.
considering. If it's typically an hour, then at least, you get,
Hour and a
Little
half,
wiggle.
hour and a half usually works.
yeah.
Thank you for the language. That definitely addresses my concern, which is mostly probably your concern.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
Well, and I just want to say thank you to you and your family for being responsible and longtime business operators here in West Sacramento.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, to the recommended changes, do any of the commissioners take any issue or have any additional comments on a recommendation of a 90 minutes following the event addition to condition of approval number 10?
Just a quick clarification, is there one or the other, or just going with the 90 minutes?
I'm now recommending 90 minutes.
Okay, I'm good with that, yeah.
I think the city attorney was recommending until the last car leaves the lot, or 90 minutes.
That's what I'm
whichever
saying.
came
Yeah,
first.
not 1 or 2 hours, but 90 minutes.
I was thinking
So-
one or the other, that's what I said.
So
Yeah, whichever is less, I think that was. our-
whichever is less.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want someone having to hang out there if the lot is, truly empty. So, this came out, this came out when, when they were not operating the lot, the best way, and so that hasn't been a problem for the last, few years, so we don't anticipate that becoming a problem again.
So I'll ask, actually, one more time for City Attorney to read over the new recommendation in its entirety.
Sure. Operator shall have personnel on site throughout the duration of when the lot is in use, and the personnel shall stay until the last car leaves the lot after an event, or 90 minutes after the event, whichever occurs first.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. So I will turn it over to my commissioners, see if there are additional discussion. If not, I will entertain a motion for this. Steph?
Moved?
All right, so I have a motion from Commissioner Vu.
I will second, along with the modified language to condition number 10.
Commissioner Vu, you accept
Yeah,
that friendly amendment? Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Vu, a second by Commissioner Liebig. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much, and congratulations to our applicant. We will be moving to item 2 on the regular agenda, and
Madam Chair, I'd just like to read the
Yes,
appeal
thank you.
language into the record, please. Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
thank you very much. And Commissioner Lepore, will you be joining us for item 2?
Since I do live within 500 feet of the property, I am going to recuse myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service
A
this
lovely
evening.
evening.
All right, so item 2 of the regular agenda is consideration of approval of annual interim bridge district event parking permits for the proposed 9 interim parking lots in the Bridge District. Mr. Laffey?
Rayleigh Field submitted an application to use 9 vacant properties in the Bridge District for special event parking during the 2017 event season. Interim parking lots in the waterfront zone require annual approval by the zoning administrator, and in the past years, the zoning administrator has approved Rayleigh Field's permit request. Interim parking lots may only be used for special events within West Sacramento, such as baseball games or marathons. They cannot be used for regular parking or for events in Sacramento. For parking to be allowed at these lots year-round as a primary use, instead of just for special events, a conditional use permit would be required, and full site improvements such as drainage and permanent lighting would be required. Staff is recommending that Planning Commission tonight approve the request and affirm the zoning administrator's decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laffey. So this is similar to the last item we just heard. I would like, as part of the discussion, for commissioners to consider entertaining amendment to condition of approval number 11, comparable to that for condition of approval number 10 for item number 3. And I'm actually going to start to my right and see if Commissioner Castillo has any comments or questions on this item.
Good.
And Vice Chair Sternfels?
Just one question for staff. I know we had the condition in the previous item specific to striping the lots. I don't recall whether or not these lots are striped or not already. And if we're applying the same logic to this site as the other one.
So the police department didn't, they only required that condition for the previous lot, not these 9 lots. The police department works closely with Rayleigh Field in parking these lots for special events. They didn't have any concerns with the striping.
So the difference is the operator in this case is the event venue.
Yeah, the lots are operated by different, entities. And so, and the lot in the corner, the Ramos lot, it's in it's a fairly tight location with really one way in and one way out on it. So striping on that one probably would help. The other lots are, there's more than one way to get in and out, and some of them do have some level of striping, or at least the aisles and whatnot are demarcated.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Vu? And Commissioner Liebig?
I have one question. On condition number 3, the Penny Newman lot should be improved through city standards up to, prior to use as a parking lot. Is the Penny Newman lot not a temporary lot?
The Penny Newman lot could become it's just the lot that's just west of Fifth Street, west of the stadium. That could become a permanent lot should the River Cats choose to do so. There was a 10-year window provided in the specific plan to where they could have a permanent lot there without a use permit. This is something that we do need to work on to, get improved, to at least to our interim condition standards. But that lot could be and the reasons why it's not included as part of the temporary approvals or interim approvals, is that we do anticipate that being a more year-round use lot, especially for some of the River Cats employees.
Just for clarification, you said it wasn't included in the temporary, but it is included?
Yeah, because this is one where they don't need a use permit for it to be a permanent lot, and it's been our understanding over the years that we want to do it with, this is a condition we've had on there because this has been an outstanding item for at least a couple of years now, that we definitely need the River Cats to, get that lot up to snuff. And so I'm sure Mr. Savage will hopefully have an update for us on that when he gets up to the podium.
Okay, so for city standards, are we saying that this is city standards of a permanent
If
or
that's
primary
what, if that's
use?
what they wish it to be, is a year-round, lot, then it would need to be, much more fully improved than the rest of the interim lots.
Okay, and if it's temporary, I'm having a hard time understanding what improvements this means. So if it's still going to be considered a temporary lot, are there city standards for a temporary lot that we're reaching for?
Well, yeah, the interim lots that we approve every year do have some minimum standards to them about being durable and dustless. and continue to be used, in that manner. And they need to rock them and they bring in the portable lighting for the later events. That's short of, full improvements, which would be paving, landscaping, permanent lighting, things like that. So if this lot is meant to be used, year-round, day-to-day, that it would need to be fully improved.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I don't see any additional comments from my colleagues. I have some comments, and then I'll invite the applicant on behalf of the property owners and applicant to come up and speak. But one of the questions that I had was the term of temporary, because there are different levels of improvement for the lots in question. That's one just sort of general question that I have, or comment that I have. And the other piece is, given some of the discussion that's been happening around parking changes in the Bridge District, what do we have in place that would preclude these lots from being used in a temporary fashion that is not intended, that is not necessarily consistent with the intention of the staff report? Specifically, the staff report, I would imagine, contemplates temporary, referring to a day-long or weekend-long event, but a temporary lot could also be temporary for 6 months or temporary for 3 months. And I wonder if there might be some impetus for defining someplace what we mean by temporary. So that's a comment. I actually want to hear from the applicant first, and then I'll welcome some additional comment and feedback from staff and from commissioners, if you want to come and address the commission. And be sure to introduce yourself as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Savage, the president of the River Cats, and a couple things that I wanted to comment on. The striping, we do have striping on our lots, and we're in the process of kind of restriping the lots that have been faded. The biggest violator of that right now is actually the black lot in the upper left corner up there. We haven't been able to restripe it recently, and so that's on our radar once it dries out a little bit better. But we have been striping, and so I think we're in fairly good shape on that front. Penny Newman, I know that was a few questions. The city, Penny Newman is not up to the standards of our other lots, and we're actually in the process of, we have submitted, it's taken us a long time to get civil engineers to work on this parcel for some strange reason. And so we actually have our first round of comments from the city. We've received those, and we are pushing to get our second round of comments completed by our civil engineer that we've brought on. We've literally gone through about 5 for this simple little parcel. So, David, we should have comments like literally this week.
Good.
And our goal is to try to get this, improved and into a better status by opening day. That's our push. So, it hasn't happened there for a little bit. But as far as long-term, we don't have any plans right now to turn that into a permanent parking lot, but that may arise here at some point in the future. So,
Yeah, and that exemption for the use permit's only got about another 2 years to go.
is then that would I would come in and chat with these folks here?
After that, yeah, you'll
Okay.
need to come see them for a use
Or
permit.
whoever's sitting behind the stairs in 2 years.
It's hard to believe it's already been 8 years since we approved the specific plan update.
Yeah.
Almost 8 years.
So with the applicant here, do my commissioners have any additional questions or comments they'd like to share?
Just in response to your comment, the description of this request is for interim commercial use parking to support Bridge District events. That's specific, and there's a reason it's specific, and it goes back to Charlie Moore going on about not wanting folks from Sacramento parking on West Sacramento side for work, daily use purposes, and then walking over. This isn't the purpose of these lots. The lots are here to serve events, and so that's why that was included. To my knowledge, I'm sorry, that's stretching it back a little
And
bit.
that is correct, yeah, the lots are may only be used for events for which the city has issued a special event permit And so we would clearly not issue those for an event occurring in Sacramento. Rayleigh Field, they get one special event that covers the entire baseball season, and then they do also get a special event permit for each non-baseball event, be it concerts and the marathons, and other events that they have there. And then, since the barn also operates under special event permit each year, which we have several in right now for various people that are going to be using the barn for events, that's the means to also allow them to also use these parking lots.
So it would run with a term with a special events permit? That's what I'm hearing there.
Yeah, so the municipal code, specifically references it can only be used for either PD permits, which is how the stadium was approved initially, or special events, which are temporary by nature.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have any other if you have any additional comments, but you're free to go, resume your seat. And again, same thing with you. Thank you very much for you and your family being excellent and responsible, longtime business owners here in our community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so, I will entertain a motion, and if folks are so amenable, we could make an amendment to, I believe, were there any amendments to item 3 regarding the Penny Newman lot, or was that just a question?
No.
Okay, so just item 11. And I'll ask the city attorney again to read item 11 as it would read in the.
So, condition 11 will be modified to say, the operator shall have personnel on site throughout the duration of when the lot is in use, and the personnel shall stay until the last car leaves the lot after an event or 90 minutes after the event, whichever occurs first.
So given this is a much larger lot, is 90 minutes the same appropriate amount of time? I apologize, Jeff, we should have had you stay up and ask this, but I didn't think about it until I heard it out loud again.
And I would like to also correct one thing that I said earlier that was incorrect, but please let's let Mr. Savage go.
Well, I don't know if and maybe I should have jumped in earlier. The main concern is just egress, right? And making sure that there's just not bottlenecks and you're not upsetting the fans and it's not causing traffic problems. And I think what happened with a couple years ago with the Ramos lot is there's just this huge bottleneck and no one could get out of the lot because there's no one there directing them. And so I think the main intention is once egress has substantially, completed, and so that could be 45 minutes after the game. It's possible that most everyone's out of there on a Monday night game where there's 3,000 people in the stadium. You're going to be pretty much out. You actually don't really need someone because the crowd is so small. But we have them there. You could get people out pretty quick. So necessarily putting a 90 minutes on there, I don't know, a rule of thumb, maybe that works, but it could go a lot faster. And as long as there's, no crowds there, it's, I'll be in my office and it'll be, 45 minutes, an hour, traffic is done and I'm walking out of there and it's not an issue and there's not a traffic problem or a safety problem. So,
I think that's where the whichever occurs first language, helps, because there's no reason for someone to sit out there for 90 minutes if the lot is empty.
Yeah, right.
And so this was a more peculiar problem to the Ramos lot because of the one-way in and one-way out, and then initially, they didn't have anybody there when the game was over. So it was, just, chaos trying to get out of there. We have not experienced that with the other lots.
Well, and I think my other thought on this is that the operator of Rayleigh Field is the operator of the lot, right? So it's a slightly different situation than we have with the other lot. And so I'm not convinced that changing the condition to match the other one is.
I will say for somebody who has to travel through this, that it's been operating much better in the last couple of years. And that's collectively, not just Ramos lot. I remember when traffic was backing up onto the freeway before the games, that has improved substantially. And then, actually, the egress happens really fast. So, I could still see a modification. I understand the intent of this, though. So if we want to, okay, the reason for modifying it is so we don't require somebody to stay there until the last
car, and
leaves.
that's what I was going to say, is I actually feel pretty strongly about modifying it. I'm open to other timing, but I don't see a good reason to be inconsistent with what we just approved for 90 minutes. I don't necessarily think that 2 hours makes a significant difference in this case. But that's just my opinion.
No, I don't think I was suggesting to go longer.
Okay, that was what I gathered from that.
Well, I was interested in knowing if it, my assumption was that it takes a much shorter time because there's more exit points than the other lot. So I didn't want to box them into 90 minutes and I've sat in there for no more than 15 or 20 minutes myself, leaving that lot on a busy game night. So I just didn't want to box them into 90 minutes if that wasn't really what they needed, because the situation's different in terms of number of exits they have.
Do you have a recommendation for an alternative?
I don't, that's why I wanted to, I mean, if
Yeah,
I
I
would hear
mean,
from him 45 minutes to an hour, by then they're mostly out. And
I mean-
I don't want to parse this out too much, but I just didn't want, Andrea's concern was really valid in terms of, 2 hours to 90 minutes because we didn't want to box in the small business. Well, I don't want to box in this business either if the situation's different.
Could it be when egress is substantially complete?
I don't think that's specific enough. I appreciate that, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's specific enough. What up, 60 minutes?
It's hard to be.
I mean, I kind of feel like we're splitting hairs at this point.
Commissioners, with the prior one where we talked about 90 minutes or after the event, whichever occurs first, I'm not clear why that wouldn't work here with the whichever occurs first. Because clearly, if they still need 90 minutes to get out of there, somebody should be there. But if they're all gone in 40 minutes, then the people should be able to go home.
I agree, plus consistency is nice across these lots.
So,
Plus we already know there's some interpretation of the last car leaving.
Right.
Right, it's a matter of enforcement, and frankly, my opinion is, this only becomes an issue when the city feels that they need to enforce it because the applicants are not cooperating. I think we're acknowledging that isn't necessarily the case here, so I am a fan of consistency, because then there's less ambiguity for enforcement to occur.
and the police are out there and on site and dealing with this, in the day-to-day, in the real world. So if there was ever an issue, I'm confident the police could figure out a good way to handle it. So if staff would propose we could use the same language as on the prior one, which includes the operating phrase, whichever occurs first, so that no one has to hang around there just for the sake of hanging around.
No, I think that's fine. I think because now we're doing this exercise for the second time, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I wonder if it would have just been easier to put the word operable car leaves the lot, as opposed to trying to put folks into a time
I'm not sure the
constraint.
lawyer will be happy with that one.
Or some other term that would just say, if the car's intending to leave the lot, we want someone there till the last car that's being driven leaves the lot. But we don't want to box folks into a specific time period.
The other thing is, if we have quorum to pass this, we don't have to actually come to an agreement where everyone agrees. If we have enough people to pass it, then I think we can
I don't have a
move
problem with
forward.
moving forward as is. I'm just, the more I'm thinking about this and we're having this conversation, I wanted to stop and pause and make sure we weren't boxing in this business in a different way than we're boxing in the other one, because there are two very different businesses and they have two very different needs, and I wanted to be respectful of each of them separately.
Mr. Savage, are you still okay with this condition?
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
we could be fine, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we're incentivized to make sure everyone
Right.
is out and has a good time, and because trust me, we hear about it when people are backed up in our lots or, the Ramos lot. They're the ones that they complain to us, so it's, that's fine.
Mr. Tilley, you said you had a correction.
Oh, yes, I did. I misspoke about the Penny Newman lot. That is one of the interim lots that is under consideration tonight, but it still does need some improvements to be suitable to be used on the interim basis.
Okay.
Cool.
I think we're done asking
All
you
right.
questions.
Thank you, and thank you,
Perhaps.
thank you everyone for your time. I know it's a special meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that,
I will entertain a motion.
I would like to move staff recommendation with modified condition 11 as read by city attorney.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Sturmfels.
Second.
That's Mr. Liebig.
Commissioner Liebig.
I'll second.
And do I ever hear a second from Commissioner Castillo? Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is informal discussion. Are there any comments or discussions or announcements from my fellow commissioners?
Chair, I just wanted to mention that last week I did have the opportunity to participate in the Age-Friendly Communities meeting here at City Hall. City staff provided a number of recommendations for how they wanted to proceed and got feedback from the committee. It was overwhelmingly positive and appreciated the opportunity to be there. One of the topics that was brought up by a few of the members of the committee was how will the city move forward in looking at alternative housing options for those who don't currently live here but may want to reside here in retirement, and what kind of options do we have available to them, and how reasonable and affordable those options are. Much of the survey work that the committee did in preparation for their recommendations was based on existing residents, not future residents, and knowing what our housing situation is and the options and different tiers and affordability levels we have. There was some interest from committee members in trying to explore that that topic further. So I don't know if that's one that we would propose to take up here, but I did want to mention it to the commission as something that came up in making sure that we have various alternatives for affordable housing and traditional housing for seniors who not just live here now, but want to come and live here in retirement.
Thank you for that. Secretary Tilley, can you tell us when we can anticipate public comment and input to start for the housing element update?
Housing element, that was not due until 2021.
Okay.
So we will not start housing element, well, we don't really need to start it probably till late 19, early 20, but nothing says we can start it earlier if there's a need to.
All right, so any other discussion? All right, well, I'll also say I'd like to acknowledge the incredible work of various staff from the city of West Sacramento and some of their colleagues on the other side of the river in working on the Urban Land Institute's riverfront activities that were happening over the weekend. A lot of work has gone into it, a lot of volunteer staff hours has gone into it. And I really appreciate particularly Charlene Hamilton and David Tilley's efforts and staff time going into some public-private partnership and regional planning activities. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?